All right, just to start off, you always create a great error when you predict results from a test. I have found that out the hard way. I've spent a lot of hours out here farting around and go, wow, that is completely not what I expected. Or you go to kind of have a premise and then you just find out you're completely wrong, especially on velocity and all that good stuff. I'm going to do a test at 40 yards. I've got a 434 grain arrow and a 650 grain arrow. And I'm going to shoot them. I'm going to zero for 40 and then back up 5 yards, and I'm going to shoot for 40. I'm going to hold 40 like I made a mistake for yardage and the animal moved, or I made an error of some kind, and to see what the difference between the arrows impact points are at 45 yards, but you're holding for 40 because you're convinced you're right, just to see if it lopes out of the sky. My prediction is that the 650 grain arrow will be dramatically lower. Not dramatically, but significantly lower, just because of the mass. That's my prediction. So don't predict anything, because predictions are stupid. Yo, it's Ferry. I'm at test lab number 2. I got my bow and some arrows. I'm bombing away at 40. And I wanted to figure out what's the difference in the drop if you shoot a 400 and some odd grain arrow. So this happens to be a 434 grain arrow, and my standard platform, which is 650 grains. What if you zeroed for 40 and then walked back 5 yards? What's the drop difference? So if you misjudge the range by 5 yards, does the light arrow save you or does the heavy arrow save you? The results were quite surprising and not what I expected. So, okay, hang on. Okay, just to go over the arrows we're shooting. We've got a 125 grain point stock insert, 300 spine, gold tip hunter, just your basic arrow. And the arrow mass, 434 grains, pretty standard arrow. Stock insert, 125 grain point. The other arrow we're shooting is 200 grain point, 100 grain insert, Sirius Apollo 250. Where are you, 250? Ah, Sirius Apollo 250. Ranch Fairy 4 fletch with a wrap. So theoretically it's draggier in the air. And the arrow mass is 651 grains. Okay, so I'm at test lab 2, as I said. The end of that table right there is 40 yards to that white target out there. Okay, so what I'm doing is I've zeroed the bow dead nuts with the 430 grain arrow and the 650 grain arrow. All right, there's a mark right there. The black mark I just put on the sight tape. That's the 650 grain arrow. I just zeroed the 430 grain arrow. And I'm going to mark that spot on the tape. Boy, don't get old. Your eyes get bad. So we got a mark here for 650 grains, and we got a mark there for the 430 grain arrow. All right, I've got a box, and I noticed that there were these panels that are just about the same size, and there's about 4 of them. So I'm going to cut each one of these panels off, put a spot on there, and then I'm going to shoot 2 or 3 or 4 shots and aggregate the results between a 5-yard misjudgment in range. So this, again, as assuming that you lasered for 40 and something went sideways, or they moved, or you weren't paying attention, turned your head, and all of a sudden the deer moved, and you shoot anyway. And what is a 5-yard misjudgment? What are the results if you shoot a really light arrow 40 yards, or if you shoot a heavy arrow 40 yards? Is the distant difference in the drop? You know, what's the difference? Is it 10 inches or 4 inches or nothing? Because this is something that, as I said earlier, has been just running around in my head, and there's a lot of theory on it, and there's a lot of discussions on velocity, and a lot of people calculating things, but I've not seen, I think I saw one video on this where a guy actually did this and was kind of surprised that when you zero for the arrow, then the difference was not that much. That's the difference. If I put the 0 for the lighter arrow and then back up with a 650 grainer, it's going to look like it's loping out of the sky. But we're not doing that. I've got zeroed on the bow. I've got 650 grain zero at 40 yards, and I've got a 434 grain arrow zeroed at 40 yards. Obviously, I had to move the slider, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the 40-yard zero, back up 5 yards, and I'm going to dead hold it for 40, as if I misjudged the range by 5 yards. And then by shooting multiple shots into each panel, we can see what the average disparity is between the two arrow systems, and if there is any. Okay, hang on. All right, I got the cardboard cut, and what I've got is a spot to aim at, and I've marked the arrow mass, and there's 4 panels per arrow shaft. There's 434, 651. I'm going to put them on the target down there and probably group shoot them. I'll be way back there, that table right there, and then where about that big tree is back there, that's 45 yards. So I zeroed from the end of the table. I'm going to walk back to 45 yards, and then I'm going to aim at that as if I think it's 40, and we'll see what happens. Like this content, I suggest you go to one of my playlists. 3 that I might suggest: the Quartering 2 shot series, my study of long-range arrow performance, which is a study of energy and speed and everything as the arrow goes down range. And then also look at my high FOC arrow building playlist. It's got great information. And to get you started on this crazy journey, start digging a hole, looking for a shovel. And when you get to that shovel, your efficiency in the bow hunting world and on-meat performance will skyrocket. I promise. All right, there's the table 5 yards away. Targets are up on the deal down there. And I am at laser distance of 45 yards. That tree's annoying. Yeah, that one too. All right. Got my rock pile here. Yeah. That's my marker for 45 yards. 651 grain arrow, bombs away. You know what you got to do? You got to put the slider on the mark for 650 grains. Stay tuned. This is why nobody does this crap, because it's a pain in the butt to all the details. I'm not that kind of guy. So I got a mark right here, and I got a mark there for 650 grain zero. So I am going to push the slider up where it should be. Okay, now it's bombs away. Try to be consistent, Fowler. Pay attention. Not really my thing. All right. 1, That one hit way too high. Then that was me. Okay, so that was my last shot. I had a couple of bad releases. I had a couple of hit. This seems to be the line that's most consistent when I do my job. I had one hit really low. This one's a little low. And then I had a high one here and actually had a high one there. And I think those are pretty erroneous. So I'm gonna probably go ahead and count that one, because if it's a hunter error, which it was, then that's realistic for a hunting situation. So that's the 651 grain set. And I know I jerked this one and that one, which was fine. Would have been good, but we're trying to figure out the drop. So I'm gonna count that one and we'll see what happens with the 434 grain set. Theoretically, the shooter's the same, so he'll make the same kind of mistakes. All right, I got the 434 grainers. And do the same thing. Away we go. All right. Gold tips. They're all the same. 125 grain points. This time, I'm actually going to adjust the zero for that arrow, because it's, so that was the zero for, it's down here. Oh, string's in the way. 650's up there. 434's down here, as you might suspect, right? Lower mass projectile and all that. I'm gonna try to shoot better this time. Kind of sucked on the last one. It's a long way for the ferry. Used to shooting like 15 yards at pigs. Pretty good. A little flatter, as you might suspect. I'm not surprised by that. And I suck at shooting. That one hit way, way low. I'm gonna take it out. That's me. No way that's fair. Because I'm not good. That was a pretty good release there for a ferry. Okay, that was pretty good too. I did find that shooting the really light arrows, I really had to concentrate on my form a lot more than I did with the other ones, like the track online and stuff. It's just an observation. That doesn't mean those arrows are spined right. I didn't knock tune them. I didn't bare shaft them right. They could be improved, but I found them to be much more critical on me. And we all know I'm not a bow guy. One of my top critics or criticisms is supposedly I'm not a bow guy. Pretty solid. Consistency across the group. I don't have a big outlier. I've got one here that would be kind of equivalent to my throw out on the 650 grain set. So maybe what I'll do is I'll take the best three and average those. That seems like the most reasonable thing to do. Obviously, shooter aside, we're trying to find some kind of a mathematical consistency here. So let's see what the results are. All right, I'm gonna measure every one of them. I'm just gonna measure from the bottom of the box. It's just a relative point. I should measure from the middle. Theoretically, I'm that good and I'm not. So I'm just gonna measure from the bottom of the box to the hole. So we got 4 on that one. and then 6.5 on the Super Bomber. And then my bad shot, 9.5 inches on the 434 grainer. So I think I'm gonna take that out, although it's got a 2.5 inch hole in it. So this is out. I'm not gonna count that. We're gonna act like we're a great shot. 6.5 ain't terrible, but we'll pull that one. So we're essentially gonna do this set of holes. So we have 2.5, 2, 2.5, 4, 3, and 4. And I originally measured that one from the middle, so I remeasured it from the bottom of it. It was a 4-inch gap right there. All right, quick math, which y'all have probably already done. The 434 grain arrow averaged 2.33 inches low when I held for 40 at 45. The 650 grain arrow averaged 3.6 inches low when I held 40 for 45, and the difference is 1.3 inches between those two arrow masses, which ain't a lot. So to clarify, I zeroed the bow at 40, okay? Then I walked back to 45 yards and I held 40 here as if I had misjudged the range or the animal had moved. And then I wanted to see what the drop difference was between the heavier arrow and the light arrow. And it really was not very substantial. I was actually pretty surprised. I was expecting 3 or 4 inches difference. It's funny I haven't tried this, but over time you just things start to ruminate in your head and you hear stuff. And then, you know, there's a lot of comments on social media and the bow hunting forums and all that stuff that those big heavy arrows just fall out of the sky, and if you shoot really far that you're going to lose trajectory and all that stuff comparatively. And then they do all kind of mathematical calculations, but I hadn't seen. I think there's a guy named Joe Miles who's done this. Somebody sent me one of his videos. I don't know that guy, but that he kind of had the same results I did. And over the years, I've been trying to figure out, well, how do you do like a concrete test of this theory that they fall out of the sky? If you shoot the pin, when I shot from 40 back there, and I had my slider on the 0 for the 434 grain arrow, it hit the heavy arrow hit like a mile low, right? Because it's not on 0 for the heavier projectile. So if you take your bow and it is tuned and shooting a 434 grain arrow, and you put a much heavier projectile on there, it's going to lope out of the sky, and it's going to look like it's inefficient over distance, and it will fall out of the sky. But this test, and I'm going to think about this some more. I'm not totally, I mean, I'm convinced of the results. The old brain's ruminating again. I'm going to have more tests. I got like a black shadow here, so I'm going to do that. But 1.3 inches difference between the projectiles if you misjudge the yardage at 5 yards, and that's at 40, right? So inside of that, it's just going to get better. So you have the increased mass, you have the increased forward to center. The 650 grain arrow was 4-fletch too, so theoretically it's draggier, theoretically. And then the other thing that was going through my head when I saw the results was deer don't jump up. So while it's not that much lower at distance, the low should help you, because if an animal moves, they're going down, right? And then if they come up while it's getting there, 1.3 inches isn't going to make that much difference. So Interesting test. Dr. Ed says this all the time. Every time you do a test, you have new ideas. So now I've got all kind of stuff running around in my head. That's the results of what I found out today. And more to come from Test Lab 2. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, but you don't have to, because I do believe this is still a free country. So if you hate me, you don't have to subscribe, but you might learn something. You know, I keep tinkering around with all these concepts. So follow me on Instagram as well. I'll be posting a bunch of stuff on Instagram this year. Surprisingly, my handle on social media is The Ranch Fairy. Although on Facebook, it's Ray Ranch Fairy, W-R-A-Y. A long time ago, I set that name up, and I have a lot of people, and I'm not going to worry about it. So there you go. See ya.